Hey guys, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if every time Naruto used Kurama's chakra, a girl fell madly in love with him? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. How in the world did he end up in this situation? Falling backwards into a large cliff to no doubt certain death, and pushed in by his own teacher no less. He would never know what was going through Jiraiya's head when the old man decided that his inability to summon up toads warranted the use of deadly force. Turning his head to the side, Naruto swallowed audibly as he looked into the near-endless darkness, with the light at the end being a terribly messy death. He was going to die. He was totally going to die. Any second now and he would become a pile of mush flattened against the ground. Naruto only hoped that after he died, he would be able to become a ghost so he could haunt the perverted old man as revenge. Pressing his shaking hands together, he squeezed his eyes shut and whispered a prayer before going through a series of hand seals. What were they again? Boar, bird, dog, monkey, ram? No. Boar, dog, bird, ram, monkey? No. Boar, dog, it was not working. Also, how in the world was he supposed to summon that red chakra that Jiraiya was talking about? It was not like he had a direct line to it. Somehow during his quick little moment and thought, he had flipped around in the air. Naruto's eyes widened, as the air stung painfully against his skin. The corners of his vision were starting to fade. He was blacking out. The shock was getting a bit too much for him. How was he ever going to become Hokage now? Feeling a subtle numbness wash over him, his eyes instinctively closed. As his muscles relaxed, the sensation of wind against his body slowly started to die down. He felt as if a veil of nothingness had suddenly wrapped itself around his body. Perhaps this was what people meant when they had told him that usually moments before one dies, they feel calmness as they were taken to the Pure Land? Reopening his eyes, he found that he was no longer falling to his death. The stinging sensation of the wind against him was replaced by the numbing sensation of cold water as he found himself lying in a shallow river. Wait, no, it was not a river. He was lying in a stream of water in some sewer. Crap, did this mean he had landed in purgatory? Slowly getting up, Naruto looked around through half-lidded eyes. The heaviness he had felt earlier had already begun to dissipate and he found that it was getting much easier to move around. Looking around, he confirmed that he was in some kind of sewer. Well, said Naruto plainly, his expression going blank as he continued looking around, I guess I'm dead then. Even he did not expect himself to sound so monotone. Seeing that there was really only one direction to walk in, he took a step forward and began trekking his way through the tunnel. Hopefully he had not ended up in one of those old folklores where a dead person spends the rest of eternity walking to atone for their sin. Hopefully. You would think that the death god would at least furnish the place, muttered Naruto quietly as he took in his dank surroundings. Stopping abruptly to avoid slamming his face into a wall, Naruto narrowed his eyes when he saw the tunnel turn in another direction. Rounding the corner, Naruto was immediately met by a doorway with a large open gate. Walking in, the doorway led to a much large room. So large that it felt like he was standing at the entrance of a stadium. Right in the middle were a row of large, metal bars and right slap dab in the middle of those bars was a large piece of paper with the word, seal, on it in large bold letters. The sheer size of them sent a shiver through Naruto's spine. Whatever that was held behind them must be absolutely huge. Maybe that was where the death god kept all the souls of the dead. Turning around, Naruto began walking back only for the gate to slam closed in his face. Shaking slightly, Naruto timidly turned his head back to look at the metal bars. I don't want to die, began Naruto quietly, his eyes widening as the usual volume in his voice returned. I don't want to die. Oh God, why me? Cried Naruto loudly as he dropped down to his knees, his hands reaching upward to pull at his hair. I'm too young to die. I still haven't kissed a girl yet. I still haven't eaten enough ramen yet. Eesh, you're kinda pathetic, aren't you? Slowly getting back up, Naruto looked over at the metal bars where the voice had come from. Who are you calling pathetic? You, answered the voice, which sounded both deep and intimidating. Naruto did not even have to see the thing speaking to know that he, she, it, whatever it was pointing a finger at him. A very antagonistic finger at that. Forgetting the situation he was in, Naruto began loudly shouting at the voice. I'm not pathetic, retorted Naruto, pointing a finger back towards where the voice came from. Last time I checked, you still were, replied the voice. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. They continued bickering for a few more seconds before Naruto changed up his argument. Well, at least I'm not stuck behind a cage. Folding his arms, Naruto puffed out his chest confidently as he put on a victorious smile. He had shut that disembodied voice up for good. At least I got ramen in my cage. Naruto widened his eyes, letting out a quiet huh as he looked back at the metal bars. He then narrowed his eyes and went back to crossing his arms. Huh, as if I'd fall for a dumb trick like that. He heard a low growl. Look, just come in here. I promise I won't do anything to hurt you. Naruto quirked a brow, a bit of hope glinting in his eye. Really? Well, not too badly at least. Whatever hope inside of him vanished as he deflated. That's still not really convincing. Look, just get in here before I get any more ticked off by your monkey antics. Monkey antics? Thought Naruto as he took a step forward. Who the heck is this guy calling a monkey? Alright, fine, I'll come in, replied Naruto as he began walking forward. What other choice did he have? The only other direction to walk in was closed off. It was not like he wanted to just keep standing there forever. Looking up over at the paper seal once more, Naruto narrowed his eyes. Maybe he was not dead. Maybe he had actually finally found a way inside the seal that held the nine-tailed fox inside of him. Wait, that meant he was currently walking right towards the giant beast right now. He did not know whether that was a good thing or not. Too late to turn back now, murmured Naruto to himself as he slipped in between the bars. Squinting his eyes in an attempt to see through the darkness, Naruto called out to the voice, "All right, I'm in." "Where are you?" "Near the back," answered the voice simply. "It's too dark," replied Naruto, having already lost himself and was now rendered to having to flail his arms around in an attempt not to bump into anything. "I can't even tell where the back is." Groaned the voice, "just stop moving for a second." Hearing someone clap their hands, a sudden beam of light appeared in front of him, revealing the owner of the voice. Naruto felt one of his eyes twitch at what he saw. Guess you were a lot closer than I thought." Naruto just continued standing there, both his eyes starting to twitch now as he stared wide-eyed at the figure. When the figure finally spoke up, the voice he had heard earlier, which sounded deep and intimidating, had immediately changed, remaining still somewhat deep but much more feminine and authoritative. "Are you just going to keep staring at me or what?" Pointing a finger, Naruto began stammering, "Why, you're a girl." The girl's cheeks went pink, but instead of melting into a shy, bubbly mess like a certain hyena, she instead grit her teeth and snarled, "Well, of course I'm a girl. Did it really take that long for your monkey brain to process that?" But you're a cute girl," stuttered Naruto loudly, the blush on his cheeks spreading to other parts of his face. "Why, you've got long hair and, asked the girl in an unamused voice. "Why, you've got boobs. You're naked," began Naruto, only to widen his eyes in shock as realization hit him like a truck. The girl blushed, her brow furrowing as she raised an arm to cover her chest. "Yes, well, that shouldn't be a surprise to you, since you've already stated that I'm a girl." Taking a deep breath to instill some calmness back into himself, Naruto folded his arms. "You're the nine-tailed fox, aren't you?" "Yep," answered the girl plainly, a pair of fox ears suddenly sprouting out of her head between locks of her red hair, along with a set of 9 black-tipped tails that began growing rapidly out from her rear. Let out Naruto, not expecting her to be so nonchalant. "What?" asked the girl harshly, "wasn't it obvious enough? Aren't you supposed to be some giant demon fox?" asked Naruto, his shoulders sagging as he continued looking at the naked girl in front of him. She shrugged, "Yes, well, I only used that form to scare you monkeys away so I could have some privacy." "Why do you keep calling humans monkeys?" "Because that's what you are," she answered plainly. "All I see when I look at your kind are just a bunch of hairless monkeys dancing around." Naruto furrowed his brow. "We're not monkeys. Humans and monkeys aren't anything alike." She gave him a look and Naruto took note of the small, passing glint in one of her gray eyes. It was as if she were debating whether or not to argue with him. "Monkeys use their hands, yes?" Pausing briefly, Naruto nodded. "Humans use their hands, yes?" Naruto nodded. "Then you are one and the same. You are all monkeys to me." But don't you use your hands, since you decided to be in that form? Asked Naruto, tilting his head to the side. Yes, but instead of using my hands for stupid things like peeling bananas or pressing them together in weird shapes to perform hand seals, I actually use them to do important things, answered the girl. And what important things do you do with your hands? They're really useful for when I want to kill a lot of things very quickly, answered the girl bluntly, her lips curving upward into a small smirk, revealing a small fang. Giving her a blank expression, Naruto folded his arms before sitting down. Even at his much lowered height, the girl did not seem that tall. If he was standing, she might have been at least 10 centimeters shorter than him. Nine-tailed fox my ass. More like nine-tailed psycho girl. She is kind of cute though. Scratch that, she's really cute. Wait, no. Stop, Naruto. That's the nine-tailed fox you're thinking about. Well then, it seems I have won this argument, said the girl as he watched the boy go quiet, her chest puffing out slightly as she praised herself. It was the obvious outcome, of course. No mortal could ever dare to win an argument with an immortal such as I. She then let out a laugh, which sounded more like a giggle. At least that was the way Naruto heard it. Taking a moment to look at the girl in front of her now that was utterly distracted by her small little victory, Naruto could see that she was rather small. She had a body similar to that of Sakura's but was way shorter. Plus her hair, which reached down to her upper back, was much darker than Sakura's, being dark red in color. One of the other differences between the height and hair color was that the girl was just a tad bit chubbier than Sakura, with a bit more meat on her arms, legs and other places. At long last, the girl had stopped laughing. While it felt like a minute had passed, she had only really laughed for 10 seconds. Where in the world did she keep all that air? Also, why did he come here again? Yes, well, now that I've utterly destroyed you in debate, began the girl, brushing her hair to the side with her hand as she took a step towards him. What is it that brings my weak little monkey container to his powerful demon tenant? Oh yeah, I need to borrow some of your chakra, stated Naruto with a nod. Hummed the girl in response, suddenly going into a thinking pose with her chin resting thoughtfully on her hand. Nope, just the way she brushed him off so nonchalantly. That was what really pissed him off. Don't you know what's happening? Cried Naruto loudly, immediately bolting back up. I'm falling to my death right now. So, if I die, you die. The girl's features darkened. He caught just a glimpse of something he did not really understand appear in her eye before she turned her head away from him. Now she was actually thinking. Her actual thinking pose was a lot less exaggerated than the pose she had struck earlier. As she continued thinking up a response, her tails curled around her, covering up her legs. It was kind of like they had a life of their own, acting complementary to their owner. We do not have to worry about that yet, replied the girl after a few moments of deep thought. Let out Naruto in response. Last time I checked, I was still falling off a cliff. This is your mindscape, stated the girl, raising a hand to gesture at the large space around them. In here, time moves exponentially slower. Think of it as a dream. Things move here as fast as the neurons in your brain can fire. 1 hour in here may or may not be a few minutes out there. N neurons? Asked Naruto, his tongue curling uncomfortably as he pronounced the word. She nodded, yes. Okay then. Replied Naruto as he looked around. So then how long do we have till I go splat on the ground? About half an hour, answered the girl plainly. What the heck are we supposed to do for half an hour? Asked Naruto loudly, the volume of his voice prompting the girl's fox ears to twitch in discomfort. We? There is no we. I'm going to get comfortable and spend the next 30 minutes watching you sweat, answered the girl with a chuckle. With a snap of her finger, a luxurious throne appeared behind her. The girl then promptly sat down and crossed her legs. It seemed that her nudity no longer embarrassed her as she watched him with a devious smirk on her face. Naruto looked at her with an unamused expression. His worry over whether or not he was going to die was overpowering his instinctual love for the female body. Somehow he doubted Jiraiya would have been able to come up with a plan to save his life if you just planted a naked woman in front of him. The humorous thought comforted him. Could you at least tell me your name? Her watchful gaze turned into a glare when he asked that question. Naruto quirked a brow. Did he somehow offend her with that simple question? You dare presume that you can ask me, the nine-tailed fox, a question without permission? The girl asked. her 9 tails suddenly raising by her sides like her serpents, each glaring at him along with her. Yes, yes he did. Naruto shrugged, I guess? She slammed a small fist down onto the armrest before standing up and crossing her arms. Look, monkey. I have never given my name to anyone before and I refuse to do so now. Naruto closed his eyes in disappointment. You don't need to be such a bitch about it. What did you just say? Opening his eyes, Naruto felt a bit of fear lodge itself in the back of his throat as he saw the girl's expression. Completely devoid of mercy, possibly filled with disdain and just a few hints of contempt. There was also a lot of anger, but sometimes you have these moments where you find yourself completely ignoring the obvious. I didn't mean it, answered Naruto, raising both of his hands up defensively. That's not the way I heard it, retorted the girl, her glare intensifying, prompting Naruto to metaphorically shrink. You would do well if you were to treat me with more respect. I am 1,000 years plus your senior after all. 1,000 years my senior and you're still somehow shorter than me, replied Naruto with a sigh, his words prompting the girl to furrow her brow. Slap. His eyes widened as a stinging sensation suddenly appeared on his cheek. Then he felt a slight rush of wind against his body before a terrible pain on the side of his face as his other cheek collided against the floor with a thud. How in the world did a girl that small hit that hard? Then the pain kicked in and he found himself cradling the side of his face. Hopefully bruises in his mindscape did not translate to bruises in real life. Let that be a lesson to you. No one disrespects me, stated the girl lowly, her foot twitching slightly as she considered kicking him a few times while he was down. Feel lucky that this seal stops me from completely taking over your body or killing you. You could have used your words instead of hitting me, replied Naruto with a groan as he slowly limped back up. Says the knuckle-headed brat, murmured the girl quietly. Hey, I'm not knuckle-headed. Last time I checked, words don't seem to get through to you. Eesh, let out Naruto in response. How much more time do we have? 15 minutes, she answered. I was sure that more time than that had passed, said Naruto as he rubbed the pain out of his cheek. Well, you were wrong, replied the girl bluntly. Why the hell are you so mean? Asked Naruto, crossing his arms as he turned around so that he could peer at the girl from the corner of his eye. She shot a look at him. Why do I need a reason to be mean? Retorted the girl, raising a hand to point a finger at him and then at herself. Why can't I just like being mean to you? That's still kind of a reason, replied Naruto, liking being mean to me. Then Naruto looked away before quietly muttering under his breath. Like how everyone likes being mean to me. What did you say? Asked the girl, taking a step forward. Speak up, monkey. Naruto looked at the girl. I didn't say anything. She furrowed her brow, her disappointment for his lack of an answer very evident on her features. When she opened her mouth to reply, her voice came out scarily deep and intimidating, just like it had before she had changed it. Why won't you tell me what you said? Naruto turned back around, a frown marring his features as he did so. Because I don't want to. Uttered the girl. Naruto chuckled, not used to someone saying no, huh? She crossed her arms, letting out a quiet HMPH in response as she glared at him. Her glare only intensified when he responded by giving her a smile. It was a full, warm smile that stretched to both sides of his face. Actually, scratch that. It would have been a warm smile if it was not so fake. What's with the smile, monkey? Asked the girl, her voice slowly getting quieter near the end of her sentence. Nothing, answered Naruto simply, smile still on his face. She narrowed her eyes before stepping backwards and sitting back down into her little throne. Her lips vibrated slightly as she let out a low growl. She did not like that smile. It was not honest. She wanted to keep calling him out on it, but there was just something so utterly heartbreaking about it. She sucked in her breath. Look, brat, you can drop the fake smile. Being dishonest with each other, especially with the situation we're both in, will only make it worse. His false smile dropped only for the corner of his lips to quirk back up ever so slightly. So since we're going to both be honest here, why don't you tell me your name? Asked Naruto, tilting his head to the side. I mean, you already know mine, right? He did not get a response. Right? Let out the girl, her toes pressing nervously into the floor as she squirmed slightly in her seat. You don't even know my name, do you? Asked Naruto, his words prompting a bit of pink to appear on the girl's cheeks. I stammered the girl, Why would I need to know your name if I could just address you as monkey or brat? Naruto gave her a blank look, the dullness of his expression somehow hitting her harder than it would have if he were glaring or shouting at her. She swallowed audibly. So, what is your name then? Naruto Uzumaki. Na-ru-to, said the girl, sounding out the syllables awkwardly. Why does your name remind me of food? He shrugged. I don't know. So since I gave you my name, why don't you give me yours? Asked Naruto, a bit of hope finding its way into his voice. Absolutely not. Well, why not? Asked Naruto, his voice getting louder as he threw his arms into the air. Because I don't want to, answered the girl simply with a smirk. Crap, did she just use his own words against him? So why not, instead of begging me for my name, why don't we discuss the price of my power? What, shouldn't we be talking about the price of you living inside of me? Retorted Naruto loudly. I mean, you are sealed inside me after all. Yes, but what do you have to give me? She asked as she summoned up a nail file before she began filing at her dainty fingernails. I'm already stuck inside of you and neither of us will be able to change that. You provide me with nothing and you dare ask me to pay you something? Naruto shrunk slightly in his spot as he sat down. I know what you and that old man were trying to do. If you want to summon up that toad, you're going to need my help, continued the girl, her smirk growing bigger and bigger as she continued talking. So what do you want in exchange for your chakra? Asked Naruto timidly, his shoulders deflating in defeat. He waited patiently for a response. He quirked an eyebrow at her silence. Head pats and belly rubs. Do I have to repeat myself? Naruto just stared blankly at her. Huffing quietly, the girl slid off her seat and began walking over to him. She reached forward, grabbing onto his wrist and eliciting a gasp out of him. Head pats, stated the girl as she bent over slightly to raise his hand to her head before lowering it and pressing it against her stomach. And belly rubs. It did not help that she over-enunciated every word as if she were speaking to a child. Did that get through your thick monkey skull? He frowned before jerking her hand away from him and standing up. Yeah, I got it. Yes, well, why did it take you so long? She asked. He shrugged. I just didn't expect the scary nine-tailed fox to be asking me for head pats and belly rubs. Puffing out her chest proudly, she placed her hands on her hips. Well, I'm a girl after all. I enjoy my head pats and belly rubs greatly. Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that, replied Naruto as he rubbed the back of his head, but I don't think all girls like head pats and belly rubs. Yes, well, don't compare me to those other girls, Naruto, retorted the girl lowly. I may look like one of your female monkeys, but I'm not. Could have fooled me, muttered Naruto as he rolled his eyes. Eesh, let out the girl, crossing her arms as she gave him a look. You really don't know how to be respectful, do you? I mean, I see how you treat all the superiors in your life, like that old man in the white coat, and that white-haired man and now the current old man you're with. You never ever respect them. I don't really think Jiraiya deserves my respect, retorted Naruto, his words prompting the girl to quirk a brow. He's a pervert after all. She rolled her eyes. Yes, well, you get my point, don't you? He nodded. Yes, good, continued the girl as she looked down at him. Since you've decided to once again disrespect me, I will be adding foot rubs to the list of things you must do for me if you wish to use my power. He deflated. I also demand that you brush my tails whenever I order you to. And I also Alright, shouted Naruto loudly as he stood up. I get it. I'm falling to my death right now. So could you just help me now and I'll owe you something later? She smirked. Sure, we could always do it that way. He let out a relieved sigh. Finally. Now how do I get out of here so I can summon that toad? She did not respond. Instead, she walked up to him. The closer she got, the more nervous Naruto got. What was she doing? She raised a hand, eliciting a flinch out of him. It appeared the slap earlier had left a mark on him earlier. I'll see you later then. She then flicked him on the head, just like Jiraiya had, but instead of flying away, he blacked out. Reeling back into consciousness, Naruto's half-lidded eyes immediately burst wide open as he realized that he was back to falling to his death. Quickly pressing his hands together, he began running through the necessary hand seals to save his life. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram. Along with his own chakra, he suddenly felt a huge pressure burst through his chakra points. It was much more powerful than his own chakra and it sent goosebumps rising all across his skin. Narrowing his eyes, he focused. Ninja art. Summoning technique, he cried as he extended his hand and activated the technique. Rock crumbled and broke apart as a large toad appeared out of nowhere. The sheer size of it creating a giant gap between the sharp rocks, creating a large thundering sound as huge stalactites fell to the ground. With a thud, Naruto landed on its back, somehow not going splat as the chubby back of the toad enveloped him. Success, cried Naruto as he raised a fist into the air. With that said, he blacked out. Never in his life had he felt so tired before. That was the one thought he had in his head the moment he blacked out. The back of Gamabunta, the toad he had been lying on, had felt so good. Especially good after having to ride its back while it jumped around for the whole day. He had no choice but to black out. How many times had he blacked out that day? Once from falling into a cliff. Twice from immediately blacking out on the toad's back when he first summoned it. 3 times once he had finished rodeoing it. Sleep felt like absolute bliss. He really had to thank the person who invented it. Sadly though, what he was going through was not blissful sleep. Instead, he had been sucked back into his mindscape. To endure whatever horrors he would have to face once the 9-tailed fox had him in her clutches. "What the hell are you doing here?" That was the first thing she said to him when he saw her. She had said it in the most frigid voice he had ever heard. She had also glared at him too. All in all, it was quite a hostile way to be welcomed back into his mindscape. The demon girl was sitting on her throne with her legs crossed as per usual. The throne itself was exactly what you would expect from a demon, with its dark metal frame with dark ruby accents. The only thing really noticeable on it was the large cushion on which the girl sat on. It made her a little bit taller, but not really. It felt really out of place since the entire rest of the 9-tailed fox's jail cell was completely empty. Speaking of the 9-tailed fox, now that he was no longer worried about falling to his death, he could finally take a good look at her without feeling a surge of adrenaline pumping through his body. He had to say, she really did look cute. Like he had called her cute, but now that he was actually looking at her, he could tell that she actually was cute. The most adorable thing about her were her gray eyes. From where he was standing, he could catch just the slightest glint of blue floating around in her gray eyes. Maybe if he could get closer, he would be able to confirm that, but he seriously doubted she would let him get close enough to look into her eyes. Plus that would be seriously creepy. It was something Jiraiya would have done, but Naruto doubted that his perverted teacher would be focusing that much on the eyes. Most likely the perverted old man would have been staring at the girl's boobs. The next most apparent thing was her red hair. It was dark, looking almost like blood, albeit in a non-gross way. As in when it's red, not that weird dried brown color. It was also long, reaching all the way to her upper back and looked silky. The length of her hair seemed to be deliberate as the front was just long enough to cover up her chest. Thank God for that. If they were not covered, he would not be able to control himself. He absolutely did not want to get an erection in front of the 9-tailed fox. No doubt the embarrassment he would feel would drive him to insanity. The girl's face was also cute. Heart-shaped would be what he would call it. Chubby cheeks that were almost begging to be pinched and a cute little dainty nose that twitched every time she glared at him. Her forehead was noticeably less big than Sakura's. Whether that was a good thing or not, Naruto did not know. He did not dislike it though. The last thing was her body. Her body. Naruto really did not know the words to describe it. She looked soft, like she hardly ever exercised. Not that she was fat. She was slender. Actually, she was pretty thin. Not as thin as Sakura, but thin in her own right. Her body was kind of like a combination of Sakura and Ino. Not overly thin and not overly feminine. He swallowed quietly. She was sorta his type. Face and body-wise at least. Personality-wise, not at all. Well, maybe. He did like Sakura's personality after all. Except Sakura was give and take. All this demon girl did was take. At that moment, he wanted to slap himself for thinking such things about the demon who had literally, just a few years ago, killed hundreds of people in his village. Looking back at her, he saw that she was still glaring at him. She would have looked so much cuter if she was not staring daggers at him, but that was true with pretty much anyone. He was so caught up in his thoughts that when she finally spoke again, he nearly jumped. "Why are you staring at me?" she asked lowly, her tail swishing in front of her as if they were also offended by his staring. You've been looking at me for about 20 seconds now. Naruto raised his hands up defensively and began sputtering, sorry. I was just thinking and I guess I sorta just looked in your direction. She narrowed her eyes, obviously doubting his answer. Yes, well, if you intend on thinking, then look somewhere else while you do it. The girl paused for a second before continuing. I can't stand being dirtied by your disgusting monkey gaze. Ouch, that hurt. Now going back to my original question. What the hell are you doing here? How should I know? Replied Naruto loudly. I just blacked out again and found myself back here. Hummed the girl as she tilted her head slightly to the side and gazed elsewhere. I had pulled you in back when you were falling down the cliff, but not this time. Why are you here though? He shrugged. I wasn't talking to you, interrupted the girl sharply. I think out loud, so just shut up for a moment. Whatever retort Naruto had, he quickly swallowed it. Let out the girl once more before she began muttering quietly to herself. After just a few moments of quiet murmuring, she finally found the answer. The reason why you found yourself back in here is that since I decided to pull you into your mindscape, this is now your default space that your mind wanders to when you're asleep. He blinked at her. So I guess you can now call this place your dreamscape. He blinked once more. Damn it, monkey. If you don't laugh at my joke, I will destroy you, threatened the girl loudly, her cheeks getting slightly pink as she leant forward and shouted at him. Naruto looked at the girl. Once he saw that she was serious, he let out a nervous chuckle. Luckily, the chuckle was enough to appease her. For the time being at least. Eesh. I put in just the slightest bit of effort to make you feel less apprehensive in my presence and all I get is a lousy chuckle, said the girl dramatically, leaning backwards and waving a hand in front of her face as if she were acting on a stage. No matter, continued the girl as she straightened her back and went back to looking at him. It seems that you and I will be spending a lot more time together. Why is that? Asked Naruto. Since you are currently dreaming, began the girl, raising her fingers and quirking them up and down as she said, dreaming, the time you're experiencing right now is a lot faster than it is outside your dreamscape. Do you really have to call it dreamscape? I don't really want to have to remember another name for this place, interrupted Naruto, immediately sucking in a breath as she glared at him in response. Yes, I want to call it dreamscape, so you will also call it dreamscape. Now, since when you sleep, you have multiple dreams, 3 to 5 a night exactly, but since I have a feeling you'll be in here for a lot longer than just one night's worth of sleep. So I guess you'll be here for around a dozen days? A dozen days? Cried Naruto loudly, his eyes widening at her words. She frowned, her brow furrowing as she looked at the boy in front of her, doing little to hide the disdain in her features. Oi. You should be grateful to be able to stay 12 days in my presence. I usually kill monkeys like you before they even finish day 1. He swallowed audibly. Maybe it was not the best idea to anger her. He really did not want her to slap him again. I didn't mean it like that, replied Naruto with a stutter. I would be glad to spend 12 days with you. She raised a brow. I'm surprised you knew a dozen meant 12. You honestly did not look smart enough to know that. I'm smarter than I look, replied Naruto. You sure do, retorted the girl with a smirk. TCH, let out Naruto in response, crossing his arms as he looked at the girl with an annoyed expression. Did I hurt your little monkey feelings? Asked the girl, puffing her cheeks out and emphasizing her words to sound more like a child. He held back an embarrassed blush before shaking his head. No. HMPH, let out the girl sharply before quietly murmuring to herself. I was sure I'd get a better reaction out of him. Nothing. I was sure you said something, replied Naruto, craning his head slightly forward. Well then, you were mistaken, retorted the girl plainly. Naruto grumbled quietly in response, his eyes narrowing slightly as he looked at the girl. She just would not quit being rude. You know, I still don't know your name. And you will never know my name, replied the girl simply, raising a hand to brush her soft hair. A monkey such as yourself does not deserve to know or utter the grand syllables that make up my name. I doubt it's that grand. I bet it's something really simple, retorted Naruto with a nod. It is grand. Grander than anything you monkeys could come up with, shouted the girl, placing her hands onto the armrests of her throne as she leaned forward. Peace. I bet the reason you don't want to give me your name is because you're embarrassed that it's actually super lame. My name is not lame, roared the girl fiercely as she shot out of her seat with her teeth grit in frustration. Could you please put on some clothes? Cried Naruto in response, his eyes widening as he got a full view of her naked body as her hair flew upward in response to her jumping out of her seat. No, replied the girl loudly, her cheeks turning a light pink as she shouted, I hate clothes. They're too restricting. Naruto looked at her. Too restricting, huh? I guess so. With that said, he began stripping, much to the chagrin of his spectator. What are you doing? Taking off my clothes, answered Naruto simply, the corner of his lip twitching as he held back a smirk. Why though? Asked the girl, her blush intensifying as she continued watching him. Because if you get to be naked, why can't I be naked? Replied Naruto, tilting his head to the side as he tossed his shirt to the side. Because why you're a monkey? Retorted the girl, one of her tails quickly shooting forward and grabbing the shirt before it fell to the ground before throwing it back at Naruto. Please just put your clothes back on. But why? Asked Naruto, tilting his head to the side coyly as he catched his shirt. Why should I wear them when they're too restricting? She fumed at his words, raising a clenched fist as she glared at the boy. Just put your clothes back on. Only if you put some clothes on first, replied Naruto with a sheepish smile on his face. But, fine. Relented the girl as she snapped her fingers solemnly. With a sigh, she summoned up a simple outfit for herself. A dark blue kimono with short sleeves and a hole in the back for her tails along with a long red scarf. Taking a step back, she looked down at her new clothes with disdain. She did not like them. Not one bit. Looking back up, she immediately flinched at the way Naruto was looking at her. See cute, uttered Naruto, his eyes widening slightly as he let the word slip out. Shut up, retorted the girl with a blush, feeling somehow even more naked with her clothes on. Stop saying things like that. You idiot. But why? Whenever I say things like this, you act all shy and cute instead of acting like a bit. Began Naruto only to stop himself. I'm not going to finish that sentence. You better not, replied the girl with a sigh as she gently scooted back onto her throne. If you ever call me a bitch again, I will force my chakra through the seal and overflow your chakra points until they burn out. Naruto swallowed quietly. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure I won't. HMPH, grunted the girl in response, now put on your clothes. Your weirdly muscular chest is grossing me out. Fine, replied Naruto with a shrug as he began putting his shirt back on. All was quiet for a little bit. During that time, Naruto decided to sit down. On her throne, she was an intimidating figure indeed. Not really. She was as intimidating as a person of her stature would be able to be. Which was only just a little bit intimidating. I hate clothes. Whined the girl as she tugged at her kimono. Only inferior species wear clothes. You monkeys would die in the winters without these things, but demons like me would be just fine. Clothes aren't all that bad, retorted Naruto, glancing away for a second as he thought out the rest of his sentence. Us people. We like to use clothes to show off how much money we have and how important we are. Plus I'm sure you care about how you look like to other people. Usually only poor people wear nothing. Clothes make you look more important. Looking back at her, he waited for a response. I guess. Crossing her legs, she stopped tugging at her kimono. I guess. Clothes aren't that bad. I still kind of hate them though. What don't you hate? Asked Naruto, tilting his head to the side. I don't hate a lot of things, answered the girl curtly. Anything, specifically? Why do you want to know? She asked, crossing her arms. I mean, it's kind of weird not knowing someone I will be spending the next 12 days with. Plus you're like the person closest to me, since you're kinda sealed inside of me, answered Naruto awkwardly, pausing occasionally throughout his sentences as she tried to speak as gently as possible. HMPH. Huh? I am not used to having to hold a conversation for this long, stated the girl, holding a thoughtful hand to her chin. I usually kill monkeys like you before they have a chance to talk to me. Sadly, I do not have the choice of doing that with you, so fine. Take a seat and I will tell you the things that I like, continued the girl, lowering her hand before extending her legs out and giving them a good stretch. I'm kind of already sitting, replied Naruto, prompting the girl to roll her eyes. On a seat I mean. There's only one seat and you're sitting on it. He heard her groan. Here, replied the girl as she snapped her fingers, summoning up a simple stool for him to sit on. He looked at the stool. Then at her throne. then at the stool, then at her throne again. He then looked at her. Seriously? What? You think I'm going to summon up something this fancy for you? Retorted the girl. The tone of her voice actually questioning. A monkey like you should be grateful that I even put in the effort to summon you anything at all. Looking at the stool, he took a seat before sending her a frown. Thanks for the chair. You're welcome. Scooting forward on the chair, Naruto slowly got closer to the girl. He then rested his head in his hands and leaned forward. So what don't you hate? Blood, answered the girl casually before licking her lips. The smell of it is incredibly enticing. Naruto cleared his throat. Well, anything else? The screams of those I slay. Some monkeys sound exceptionally pleasant when they scream. They howl on and on as I rip them to pieces, answered the girl, placing her hand on her heart and letting out a quiet sigh. I have dubbed them howler monkeys. I also enjoy the sight of the aftermaths of my rampages. Nothing says you own the world like a path of destruction behind you. Is there anything you like that doesn't have to do with killing people? Asked Naruto. His shoulders sagged as he looked at the girl with an incredulous expression on his face. She blinked at him. Well, of course. And they would be? Orange, answered the girl with a nod. My favorite color is orange. Naruto's eyes widened. Orange? My favorite color is orange too. The girl blushed. Did I say orange? I meant blue. Yes, I said blue, not orange, stammered the girl, her blush spreading to her ears as she sputtered before the boy. Oh, replied Naruto quietly, so I guess that's why you made your kimono blue, huh? The girl frantically nodded her head. So what else do you like? Biting things, answered the girl. Bones are my go-to since they always have this satisfying crunch to them. Can you please not talk about bones like they are chips? She quirked a brow. Chips? What are chips? They're like thin potatoes that you fry up and they're all crunchy and crispy, answered Naruto, eliciting a bleg out of the girl. Oh, monkey food. Sounds gross. Actually, they're not that bad. They can get a bit oily, but they taste good, replied Naruto with a nod. Yes, they may be all fine and dandy for taste buds that belong to a monkey, but my tastes are much more refined. It has been at least a few hundred years since I have eaten something I found worthy for my delicate palate, retorted the girl, puffing her chest out and closing her eyes as she spoke proudly. You're really picky, huh? She huffed. No, I am not picky. I just have standards, unlike you. I can think of a food that will satisfy your tastes, said Naruto, raising a finger, prompting the girl to quirk a brow. Oh, and what would that be? Ramen. Let out the girl as she tilted her head. Ramen? Naruto nodded his head repeatedly. Ramen. The most delicious food in the world. The most delicious food in the world, you say? Asked the girl, her tongue unconsciously extending outward to lick her lips. He nodded once more. Maybe when I get out of here, I'll find some of this. Ramen, you speak of, murmured the girl quietly. You won't regret it, replied Naruto, giving her a thumbs up and a smile. Yes, well, said the girl, her cheeks turning a slight pink as she glanced away. If it does not taste good, I'll make your kind repent for dirtying my taste buds by killing 1,000 children. You really are crazy, remarked Naruto as he gave her a disappointed look. I mean, we're talking about food and all you do is respond by how if this or that doesn't happen then you'll go around killing a bunch of people. I am not crazy, retorted the girl, looking back at him, her tail swirling around her angrily. You kinda are. I am not. You kinda are. I'm not. R2. I'm not. R2. I'm not crazy. Then why go spouting off stuff like that? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side as he asked the question. Because, I don't know, answered the girl quietly, her ears sagging downward, along with her tails as she responded. She then deflated slightly, as her body relaxed against the comfy cushions of her throne. I don't know anything anymore. Being stuck in this cage all the time is driving me insane. I can almost feel my actual sanity seeping away with each passing day. Cried the girl as she swooned to the side, into a position where she was laying sideways on her throne. I hate being stuck here. I want to be outside. Out there where I get to run around and be free. And kill people? I would even give up on that if it meant I could be free. You should have thought about that before you decided to go on a rampage through Konoha, retorted Naruto, crossing his arms and leaning back. It suits you right, getting sealed inside of me for actually trying to take down my village. The girl sniffed quietly, raising a hand to hold over her mouth as tears pooled on her eyelids. Oi, wait, are you crying? She shook her head, and no. There's just something my eye. That was a blatant lie. Even he could see that. Taking a closer look, he could see the girl was trying terribly hard to keep the tears in. Her face was scrunched up and her cheeks were puffing out. He would have to admit, it was ridiculous for the nine-tailed fox to make. Then again, the way she puffed out her cheeks did look kinda cute. As a single tear found its way sliding down the side of her face, Naruto could not help but just feel the slightest bit guilty. Demon fox or not, he really did not like making people cry. Maybe he could try comforting her? No, that was a bad idea. She deserved to feel bad. If anything, he should be yelling at her for all the bad things she had done. Then again, maybe not. He sighed, before slowly leaning forward. You okay? Does it look like I'm okay? He instantly regretted opening his mouth. Well, I mean, you're crying. Oh please mouth, please do not keep opening by yourself was what Naruto must have been thinking at that moment. And no, I'm not, replied the girl, her moment of weakness allowing more tears to flow out. Come on, it's kinda obvious, remarked Naruto, earning him a tear-filled glare from the girl. If you admit to it, I'll pat your head. His words elicited a quiet gasp from the girl. Why you will. And I'll throw in a few scratches behind your ears, replied Naruto, giving her a smile. You're just trying to catch me off guard. You and your alluring words, retorted the girl through grit teeth, her resolve fading. His smile only grew wider. Okay, just come here, get on the throne, let me sit in your lap. Oh okay, replied Naruto with a slight stutter as he got off his stool and walked over to her throne. With a few awkward shuffling of positions, the girl sat down gently on Naruto's lap. The first thing he noticed was how light she was. Then it was the insane softness of her kimono. He had actually widened his eyes at that. Your kimono feels like pillows, stated Naruto as he fought the urge to run his hands all over the crazy soft fabric. Of course, replied the girl, blushing furiously now that he could no longer see her face. Only the best for me, after all. Naruto nodded slowly, his lips curving upward into an awkward smile. Yeah. Only the best. What are you waiting for? Asked the girl. Pat my head already. Alright, replied Naruto as he raised his hand and placed it gently on top of the girl's head. Let out the girl, her lower lip quivering slightly. God. It's been ages since someone has patted me on the head. Someone's actually patted you on the head before? Asked Naruto as he began softly running his fingers through her hair. Why yeah, I kept one of you monkeys as a slave once and had him brush the fur on my head, answered the girl, her tails sliding downward to wrap around the sides of the throne. Oh, what happened to him? He died, answered the girl simply, before shuddering slightly as one of his fingers brushed by one of her ears. How? I killed him. Why? Because he wasn't good at his job. Am I good at my job? Asked Naruto as he began patting her head with both hands. No, answered the girl, her eyes rolling slight back into her head as she bit down on her lower lip. Why you're awful at this. I would kill you but then I'd have no one to pat my head. Well at least I'm better than nothing, replied Naruto as he rolled his eyes. No, why you're worse than nothing. Oh, well, I guess I should stop patting your head then. No, keep petting me, I'm still not done being comforted. You must really love head pats, remarked Naruto as he began using both his hands to scratch behind her ears, prompting them to shudder and twitch. I love them, admitted the girl. They're the only thing that you monkeys can give to me besides belly rubs and massages. How long do I have to keep doing this? For 12 days. What? Ow, not the ears, cried the girl as Naruto tugged on her ears. Teeth are sensitive. You'll pull them off. That's the point. Stop pulling on them. No, if you keep pulling on them He could not remember the last time he had ever been this nervous. There had to be at least 1,000 people around him. It did not help that they were all spectating him and Neji. It felt terribly suffocating having 1,000 set of eyes on you. Like he was drowning in all the stares. With each new person he took in, the more and more metaphorical water pooled around him. He liked attention, but not this much attention. Naruto looked over at his opponent, Neji. He swallowed audibly. The fight that would happen soon would be difficult to win. Very difficult, since it was Neji, the guy who literally had no qualms about beating his own cousin, the innocent girl named Hinata, to near death. Neji was a cold-blooded killer. At least that was Naruto's opinion of him. He had prepared for this fight though. Unlike every other fight before this one, he had actually prepared. He did have 12 days to burn after all, and after that accident with the nine-tailed fox. Let us just say that they kept a bit of distance between them after that. The girl had literally summoned up a cage within her own cage to cage him for the whole 12 days. It was a cage created by the caged to cage the person who was caging her. It was a cageception. During those 12 days, the only thing he had to entertain himself with was conversation. Which he did not get for the first day. Never in his life had he ever met someone so stubborn. The girl had literally turned her throne around and occupied herself for hours just doing simple things like murmuring quietly to herself, brushing her tails or filing her nails. That had been the most boring thing he had ever experienced. It was so boring he felt that vomiting would have been a better alternative, because then he would at least not have to deal with this soul-sucking emptiness that came from not doing anything. It had been like the second or maybe the third day when the girl finally turned back around to face him. It was then that he discovered that her throne also functioned as a spinning office chair. What a truly functional throne it was. He wished he had one. When he became Hokage, he would get one for his office. Back to the point. The conversation had been something like this. Are you finally going to talk to me? Foo. It amuses me to see such a weary expression on your face. It was as if the very life was sucked out of you and then forcibly smushed back into you, answered the girl with a fang-revealing smirk as she crossed her legs. Yeah, whatever. I'm bored, replied Naruto, his voice less enthusiastic than it was a few days ago and a lot more hollow and drawn out. Well then you shall remain bored. That is your punishment fitting for how you humiliated me, stated the girl, letting out a light giggle as she finished her last sentence. Can we just forget about that? I got like 10 or 9 days left in here. If I don't do something in the next hour, I'll end up dying of boredom and taking you with me. She widened her eyes and leant forward in her seat. You humans can die of boredom? Naruto suppressed a smirk before nodding and waving a hand over his face dramatically. Yes. As humans are cursed with dying when we get too bored. TCH, inferior species. Replied the girl, dipping her head for a moment before looking back up at Naruto. Fine. I guess it is my job to entertain you. Just know that if you overstep your bounds, I will destroy you. How am I supposed to step anywhere when you've got me stuck in this cage? Asked Naruto, tilting his head to the side coyly. HMPH, grunted the girl in response, you raise a good point. For a monkey, whatever. So how can I, the mighty nine-tailed fox, entertain my vassal? Asked the girl, her tail swirling around her slowly and curiously. Well, you know about the Chunin exams, right? She shook her head. Give me the quick version. Well, it's just this test where a bunch of people fight each other. He saw her eyes visibly brighten up. Ooh, a fight? Between monkeys? Fine entertainment right there. I remember I once made 2 monkeys fight to the death. Then I killed the winner. Naruto groaned. Yeah, whatever. You do you. I have a fight against someone in a few days. Oh? And who would you be fighting against? This asshole named Neji, answered Naruto before crossing his arms. The girl quirked an eyebrow. Oh? Naruto nodded. Yeah, I gotta fight him. He's a really strong person, so I was thinking maybe you could help me out. Why should I help you out? Asked the girl, placing a hand on her chin as she smirked at him. It would be entertaining seeing you get humiliated. You're a proud person, right? Asked Naruto, prompting the girl to nod. You don't like losing fights, right? The only fight I've ever lost is against your damned 4th Hokage, answered the girl with a snarl, her brow furrowing as she remembered the man who had sealed her. Well, if I get beat up, doesn't it count as an indirect loss for you? He saw one of her eyes twitch. I never thought of it that way. It would be humiliating, even if it's just you getting beaten up, answered the girl thoughtfully as she nodded her head. Very well, I will grant you some assistance in your fight against that Neji fellow. Continued the girl as she puffed her chest out proudly and placed her hands on her hips. Oh, then, if you lose though, I will never help you again. Naruto swallowed quietly. Yeah. Like I would ever lose to that guy. with his crazy overpowered instant muscle spasm touch of cousin killing death. There was a moment of silence. I have no idea what the hell any of that means. I think it's called the gentle fist. The gentle fist sounds really dumb. How would a gentle fist kill cousins? Said the girl before she looked into Naruto's eyes. With every passing generation, you monkeys make less and less sense to me. How so? It made more sense back when all you monkeys would do is grunt and howl. That was something I could understand, explained the girl. Now you decided to come up with language. Do you know how many years it took me to understand that nine-tailed fox meant me? Naruto shook his head. About 31 years. Yes. Well, you monkeys then decided to create villages. It was much easier getting around when I did not have to walk around a village. Back then, the monkeys would all quickly pack up their animal hide shelters whenever I was nearby. The girl then sighed. Back then you monkeys had courtesy. I would walk in, you would all disperse, it was a simple relationship. Okay. Yes, well, then you monkeys had to create techniques using your chakra. You know easy it was to kill monkeys when they did not shoot fireballs or throw chunks of rock at you? How much is? A whole lot easier. There was a moment of silence. Yes, now that you've learned how much better it was back when you monkeys were more primitive, we can now return to the topic of how I will be helping you beat your opponent in this Chunin exams of yours. With his crazy, overpowered, instant muscle spasm, touch of cousin killing death. The girl then coughed, gentle fist. Naruto gave her a sheepish smile as he chuckled nervously. Yeah. Okay, I have a plan, stated the girl with a nod. That quickly? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side. Yes. Okay, so what's the plan? Slap him. Slap him. What? Slap him. Pardon? I said slap him. I heard you the first time, but I have no idea what you mean by that, retorted Naruto, bolting up only to slam the top of his head into the cage. Ow. HMPH, a fitting punishment for a monkey that dares talk back to me, stated the girl dismissively as she turned her head and let out a sharp, HMPH. Okay, whatever. Why should I slap him? Asked Naruto as he rubbed the top of his head, his teeth slightly grit. Why are you even asking that question? Asked the girl in response, her furrowed brow telling him that she was actually confused. You know how powerful my slaps are, right? He shuddered at the memory and nodded. He had in actuality been slapped twice by her. Once for being rude and the second right after the whole ear-pulling accident. Then it should be obvious that as my container, the mighty slap of the nine-tailed fox would have been transferred to you. I don't think that's how it works, replied Naruto hesitantly. Well, why don't you try it out? On who? Hummed the girl in response. It seems like there is only us here. Okay, it seems there is no other option. Began the girl dramatically before taking a deep breath. You must slap me. What? Yes, I know. It must pain you greatly to know that you must lay your hand on someone as beautiful as me, but it must be done, replied the girl dramatically as she let out a quiet gasp, but this is the only way for me to prove my point. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. Do it now before I change my mind, answered the girl, turning her head to the side to avoid having to witness his hand slam into her before she snapped her fingers and dispelled the cage around Naruto. Alright then, since you insist, said Naruto, the corner of his lip curving upward into a smirk as he rolled up one of his sleeves. Walking up to the girl, Naruto could see just the faint telltale signs of anxiety. The small little droplet of sweat that was slowly sliding down the side of her head. The slight quivering of her lips. The little hum she did in the hopes that it would calm her nerves. He felt his smirk grow wider. This was going to be good. Raising his hand, he brought it down swiftly. Wait, cried the girl suddenly, just in time for him to stop his hand before it connected with her cheek. What? Asked Naruto impatiently, letting out a quiet huff as he looked down at the girl. Isn't there any other way? Asked the girl, her eyes slightly glistening as worried tears pooled on her eyelids. This was your idea though, answered Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side. Are you telling me that the nine-tailed fox enjoys going back on her word? No, I mean, no, I don't, replied the girl, her cheeks turning a light pink as she continued speaking, it's just that. Will it hurt? I'm slapping you. Of course it's going to hurt. She looked up at him before taking a deep breath. Okay, Do it. Doing as he did earlier, Naruto raised his hand and brought it down swiftly towards the girl's face. Waiblegh. She did not get to finish her sentence before Naruto's slap sent her flying out of her throne, into the air and then onto the ground with a loud thud. Naruto looked at her, then at her hand, then back at her, then back at his hand. Whoa, whoa is right, replied the girl, her teeth grit as she picked herself off the ground. Woe is my face, for the pain I feel right now is immeasurable. Are you okay? Do I look okay? Shouted the girl in response, raising both of her hands to comfort the burning sensation on her cheek as tears threatened to appear. My face hurts, whined the girl, sniffling quietly before snapping her fingers softly, summoning up a comfy-looking bed. I don't think I can go on. Do you plan on sleeping till the pain goes away? Maybe I'll just sleep forever. Maybe then I will never have to feel pain that great ever again, answered the girl dramatically before she swooned onto the bed. Monkey, come over here. Why? You dare ask why? Consider it my last dying wish. I don't think you're dying. I'm not, which is why I asked you to consider it. Now just get over here. I have a feeling you're going to try and slap me to get revenge, stated Naruto as he crossed his arms. No, I do not have the energy to do that. Your slap has truly sapped me of my power, replied the girl as she rolled on her bed, wrapping the blanket around her until she resembled a sushi roll. I just want you to caress the pain in my cheek away. You know this sounds kind of weird, right? Yes, answered the girl with a snarl, her cheeks turning pink. I do. But the pain is not going to go away by itself. Give it some time, I'm sure it will go away, replied Naruto. Can you just please? Asked the girl, blushing softly as she pulled her arm out of the blankets and placed it on her cheek. It hurts. I still think it's a bad idea. Here I am, the nine-tailed fox, asking you kindly to rub her cheek and this is how you respond, began the girl with a pout. I'm hurt. You would think a monkey would have more respect for an immortal being such as myself. Naruto narrowed his eyes before rolling them. Fine. Yay. I mean. Let out the girl accidentally, her blush spreading to her ears as she tried to correct herself. I mean. Yes, of course you would eventually comply to my commands. It is only natural since I am obviously vastly superior to you in every possible way. He looked at her for a second, an incredulous expression on his face before he shrugged and rolled his eyes. Whatever. Let's just get this over with. Sit here, where I can see you, instructed the girl, pointing to a somewhat empty space on the bed. All right, replied Naruto, doing exactly as the girl instructed him to. Okay, now rub my cheek with this, said the girl, summoning up a small bag of ice and handing it to him. He took the bag of ice and began rubbing it gently against the cheek he had slapped. With every soft brush, the girl sighed happily as the cool ice soothed the stinging sensation on her face. You do your job well, monkey, praised the girl begrudgingly, prompting Naruto rolls his eyes. When will you stop calling me monkey? I think you've only said my name once. The girl pouted. Monkey only has 2 syllables. Your name has 3. Efficiency is best. Okay. Efficiency, remarked Naruto. Well, if we're going to talk about it that way. Why can't you tell me your name? I'm sure your name has less syllables than nine-tailed fox. It does, replied the girl, but why should I give you my name? Maybe if you give me your name, we can actually move this thing we have together past container and tenant? What do you mean by that? Maybe we can become friends. She looked at him for a second. Then she began laughing. It was not gradual either. 1 second she was staring at him with a straight expression on her face and the next she was laughing so hard that tears began pooling on her eyelids. In between moments of laughter, she would mix in a few squeaks of pain as her laughing strained her cheeks. Oh, that's funny. The girl managed to let out. I always knew you monkeys were funny. But that is hysterical. All he could do was stare at her with an annoyed expression on his face. He could feel one of his eyes twitching. Without a second thought, he pressed the bag of ice harder against her cheek. Haha. Oh ow. What the hell do you think you're doing? Naruto did not respond. Instead, he just continued pressing the bag of ice into her face. Hey, brat, you're really starting to hurt me. Man, she really was hopeless. Ow, please, no more, my cheek. You would think that the nine-tailed fox would have at least been a bit more understanding, but no. Damn it monkey, I'll kill you and you don't stop. Maybe just a bit more scary too, but no. She had given him some ideas on beating Neji though, which might have made the whole dozen-day ordeal of having to stay in his dreamscape worthwhile. Maybe he would actually need to get close enough to Neji to slap him to see if it would actually work. Which brings us back to the present. The crowd was gradually getting more and more antsy as they cheered loudly at the arena below. The fight was going to begin any second now. Naruto looked at the sleazy-looking proctor, taking just a quick moment to notice the huge bags underneath his eyes. Why did the guy look so sleep-deprived? Wait, no distractions. He had to focus on Neji. Forcing his eyes back onto his opponent, Naruto swallowed quietly. The guy looked scarily calm, with the only bit of emotion showing being the tiny smirk he had on his face, which no doubt meant he was looking forward to beating the absolute tar out of him. If Neji nearly killed Hinata, who was related to him, what was going to happen to Naruto, who was not related to him? Naruto really did not want to know. "Get ready," said the proctor, taking a step back before squatting down on his knees. Naruto stiffened and narrowed his eyes before slowly getting into his stance. Neji did the same, except his execution was a whole lot smoother, borderline perfectionist by the way he slid so easily into it. Naruto felt just a bit of annoyance when he saw Neji smirk at him. Man, on the list of people he really did not like, Neji was way up there along with Sasuke. Which was saying something, because he really did not like Sasuke. Begin. Wait, what? Crap. He spent too much time thinking and now Neji was charging at him. Whoa. Let out Naruto as he stumbled backwards, just in time to dodge a jab towards his neck. This guy was actually trying to kill him. Naruto grit his teeth. He was not going to become one of those people in those weird action stories where they get poked by some mysterious death tap and end up having their heads explode. If anything, he would be the one making heads explode. He just really needed to slap Neji. "You are quick, I will give you that," stated Neji as he dashed in for another strike. "And you look like a girl," retorted Naruto, taking just a bit of pleasure from seeing the Hyuga scowl at him. "You will regret saying that." "I don't think I will," replied Naruto with a confident smile as he jumped a couple of feet back and formed a hand seal. The plan was simple. Swarm Neji to the point of exhaustion with shadow clones. Then rush in to deal the fate-sealing slap of doom. It was a good plan. Maybe. Multiple shadow clone technique. Good thing the arena they were fighting in was huge, because there had to be at least 200 Narutos that suddenly popped into existence. Their sudden appearance elicited a loud roar of approval from the crowd. They were so loud that their volume was almost deafening. It took a long while for the crowd to shut up. Like 20 seconds. Where the hell did they get all that air to do all that cheering? "Don't think that mere numbers will grant you victory," stated Neji, an undaunted expression on his face, the corner of his lip curving upward into an almost excited smile, "since it will be fate that decides the winner of this battle. And fate has decided that the winner will be me." "Like hell," retorted Naruto, raising his arm like an officer preparing to order his men into battle. "By the end of this, you'll be wishing that fate didn't put you up against me." With that said, he waved his arm down and unleashed his clone army onto Neji. For some strange reason, Naruto felt as if, for just the quickest of moments, that he had just been teleported to a galaxy, far, far away. "You'll never beat all of us," shouted Naruto as his clones charged towards the Hyuga. The first wave of clones were immediately decimated, wiped out of existence by Neji's gentle fist. Despite this, the large army of clones continued pressing on. Their numbers were so numerous that their chakra points made up an impenetrable wall, making it extremely hard to discern who was actually the real Naruto. It was really starting to tick Neji off that his Byakugan was not delivering him instant victory. On the other hand, the whole situation was really starting to boost Naruto's ego. This was his chance. Neji was distracted. He could just sneak up on him and it would be so easy. The anticipation was killing him. Naruto really just wanted to smack the complete crap out of that guy's fate-loving face. Neji really deserved it too. Jumping towards the Hyuga, Naruto had a few of his clones jump up with him in an attempt to disguise himself among them. "I got you now," shouted Naruto as he brought his hand up. The last thing Neji saw was Naruto's foxy grin flying downward toward him, before Naruto's hand sailed into his face. What is this?" thought Neji, the world around him slowing down as Naruto's slap made contact with him, How did he beat me? Maybe fate isn't all it's cracked up to be. Bleg. That was the sound Neji made as he flew off to the side, crashing through multiple shadow clones till he dropped to the ground and began rolling all the way in till he smacked into the wall with a thud. He had tried getting up, only to drop back down and curl up in a fetal position. One of his hands may or may not have drifted towards his face in order to soothe the terrible stinging pain. The crowd went silent. Naruto dispersed his clones, revealing the proctor who had been sitting patiently in the same spot while the whole match had gone on. How he did not drown in the sea of Naruto earlier, no one knew. It was a thing that was better left unexplained. The match goes to Naruto. The arena was then again drowned in the loud, roaring cheer of the spectators. Raising a fist into the air, Naruto celebrated his victory by flashing a big smile at the people watching him. Maybe this level of attention was not so bad after all? Hopefully he did not turn into Sasuke though. He may be a bit, but he was not that. Unbeknownst to him, deep down in his dreamscape, there was another person watching him. Well, watching through him since she could not really watch him through a third-person perspective. The nine-tailed fox was currently seated in a much less royal-looking throne than before. Instead of being dark with red accents, it was now what appeared to be an orange sofa chair, with a ton of blankets. She had obviously dug herself deep into them, wrapping them all around her, turning her into a snuggled-up mountain of blankets with only her face showing. "Good job," praised the girl quietly. Then she hesitated, taking a moment to look around before finishing her sentence. Naruto. It was quite rare for him to ever feel desolate. He never liked to act sad around people. If he just kept up a smile, then they would smile back at him and that would usually lift his spirits up. But this was pain that he had never experienced before. As if the world wanted him to feel even more down, it had decided to cry along with him and the rest of Konoha at the funeral. Some may have said that this was a sign that the man they mourning was so great that his death affected the entire world. Naruto did not really like overthinking ways like that. It was simple really. He had lost one of his precious people. During the funeral, he had accompanied his fellow mourners in silence. He had never been to a funeral before. He had to refrain from looking around. It was much more respectful if he stood there like everyone else, but what he really wanted to do was to drop to his knees and cry out at the heavens in the hopes that Sarutobi would be able to hear him. It was strange. He had never really acknowledged the Pure Land before, but now that he knew that someone close to him was now residing up there, he found himself thinking about it a lot more. He had decided to leave right after the funeral was over so that he could head back to his apartment. It was strange that during everything, he had felt surreal, especially during the battle against Shukaku, and it was now that exhaustion decided to hit him. The moment he entered his home, he flung himself onto the bed and fell asleep, wet morning clothes and all. Through all the discomfort, Naruto found himself too lazy to change. He just wanted to lose himself in a few days' worth of conversation with his tenant. At this point, he cared very little for who he talked to. As long as it would not bite him in the ass later, it was all fine with him. The nine-tailed fox was perfect for this. First, she would not be able to tell anyone about the impending breakdown he was going to have, and second, she was just something pretty to look at. Being the somewhat young boy that he was, it was really just the simpler things in life that made him happy. Things like ramen and cute girls. The nine-tailed fox was a very cute girl. If he told anyone that, they would have called him crazy or insane. It made him feel kind of special that he knew something that no one else knew. Like he was the keeper of secrets. Are you going to say something, or are you just going to stand there like an idiot? The nine-tailed fox was also a very rude girl, which was the complete opposite of what he wanted to experience at the moment. He felt one of his eyes twitch in response to her words. He was not in the mood for this. It felt like there was this suction in his chest that kept his lungs from working right because he found himself unable to speak. Was it from anger or sadness? He did not know. "Hello? Did your monkey brain short-circuit?" asked the girl, as she leant forward and made a false worried expression. His hands clenched tightly into fists. The simple action prompted the girl to quirk an eyebrow. Did something happen? Naruto wanted to laugh. It was as if she actually put some sentimentality into those words. "Yes, something happened," answered Naruto, the dullness of his voice prompting the girl's eyes to widen slightly in surprise. The nine-tailed fox swallowed quietly and leaned back into her seat. How was she to approach this? She was an intelligent individual and she knew that the next thing she did would decide the rest of their little relationship. She liked it the way it was currently, with him at her beck and call, with her occasionally throwing a bit of power at him. It made her feel needed. Something she found felt absolutely wonderful. She would never admit that to him though. If she screwed this up, Naruto was no doubt going to stop coming to her for help, and then she would once again be alone. Alone. Loneliness was a bitter pill to swallow, and she did not intend to take in any more. She much preferred the sweet taste of candy. Not that Naruto's company was candy or anything. He was a disgusting monkey after all. Is it your turn to short circuit? Huh? You've been sitting there murmuring for like a minute, replied Naruto as he took a step forward. Something about pills and candy? The girl waved her hand dismissively. Just ignore all that and come here. Oh? He took another step forward. Why should I? You clearly have something weighing on your mind, answered the girl before snapping her fingers and summoning up another throne for him to sit on. So as the nine-tailed fox and your tenant, I will spend some of my precious time to hear you out. A throne? Not a stool this time? Consider it a kindness I have rewarded you for showing Shukaku that the nine-tailed fox is not to be messed with, even if it was just my container that defeated him, praised the girl, giving him an approving nod. He looked at the throne before looking back at the girl. Right. Come on, sit, insisted Yoko, gesturing with both of her hands openly. Naruto complied, slowly walking around to the front of the throne before sitting down on it. A pleasant shudder ran through his body as he realized that just like the girl's throne, his throne was also incredibly comfortable. The two thrones were nearly alike, one of the main differences being the color. The girl's throne was dark metal with ruby accents and his was a dark blue with orange accents. There was one thing that he was really looking out for though. It was whether or not his throne swiveled. He pressed a foot against the ground. Yes, his throne did indeed swivel. It was a +1 in his book of opinions for the girl. Comfy chair, ain't it? Asked the girl with a smug smirk on her face. Naruto nodded. Now please tell me what's been weighing you down, suggested the girl calmly, her expression turning soft as she spoke, which somehow made her words feel a lot more tender than they probably were. He looked at her for a moment. On one hand, there was the chance that he would be able to have some nice conversation to help him feel better, and on the other hand, there was a chance that the girl would mock and shame him. Screw it. At this point, he would be satisfied with spilling his emotions to an actual fox. Naruto took a deep breath. One of my precious people died. The girl widened her eyes. Who was it? My old man. Your old man? Your father? Naruto shook his head. No. My sort of adoptive grandfather. Sort of? He would occasionally visit me in the orphanage and eventually bought an apartment for me. He's given me everything I own, answered Naruto, prompting the girl to nod her head in understanding. What kind of a man was he? Asked the girl, tilting her head slightly to the side. He was the Hokage. The girl widened her eyes as she clicked her tongue. She was obviously impressed by the connections he had. The Hokage, huh? That's impressive. You must have been one important monkey to have garnered his attention, praised the girl in a somewhat backwards fashion. She paused for a quick moment. How did he die? They told me that Orochimaru had managed to isolate him, answered Naruto, the lower part of his face tensing awkwardly as he pronounced, isolate, and during the battle, he used this weird technique that made the other Hokages come back to life. That's how he was able to kill him. She did not bother to ask him who Orochimaru was. He probably did not want to go into detail on the murderer of one of precious people. The girl whistled. He must have been a very strong monkey if it took all that to finally take him down. Naruto let out a quiet chuckle. Yeah, he was. I think someone told me that he even had a contract with the monkeys. A monkey summoning monkeys, remarked the girl almost thoughtfully. Sounds like monkeyception to me. Her words elicited a chuckle from the boy, who then proceeded to curve his lips upward into a small smile. Oh, have I cheered you up? Naruto nodded. You have. Feeling that her job was finished, the girl leaned back into her throne. Perhaps now was a good time to ask for a few head pats as a reward, or maybe even some tummy rubs. She was feeling just a tad bit greedy, so maybe she could add in a foot massage. She smiled at the thought, letting out a quiet hum of amusement as she thought of all the ways she could get him to reward her. Wait, no, she was going to reward him. It was an honor for a monkey such as him to touch her. The only reason she was letting him touch her was because there was no one else to pat her head, or give her belly rubs or comb her tails. It was not like she liked him or anything. "You know, I kinda like this side of you," said Naruto after a moment of silence. How so?" asked the girl carefully, turning her head slightly and looking at him from the corner of her eye. "You sound like you actually care about me," answered Naruto, the corners of his eyes crinkling up as he gave her a genuine smile. The girl's eyes widened ever so slightly before she quickly placed both of her hands on her cheeks to hide her impending blush. That smile literally had the power to quell her hate for monkeys. She would bet 2.5 of her tails that his smile would have done the same for all the other tailed beasts. She would never let them see it though. Naruto's smile was for her and her alone. She would never admit that to him though. Her pride would never let her. She would have to shut down any notion he had of her caring for him, or else he would never let her live it down. "Well, I don't actually care about you," stated the girl, her voice shaking ever so slightly. "I'm just aiding in the recovery in your emotions so you don't go out there and do something stupid that'll kill the both of us." Naruto chuckled. "Right. There's no way I could ever possibly care about you. You're a monkey," continued the girl, squeezing her eyes shut as her blush spread from her cheeks to her ears and the sides of her forehead. Naruto leaned forward. "Come on. Admit to this poor monkey that you at least care a little about him." No. Why not?" asked Naruto, tilting his head to the side in curiosity. "My pride won't let me," answered the girl quietly, her tails wrapping around her defensively. There was a moment of silence. The girl looked over at Naruto and saw that he was pouting at her with wide eyes. Holy crap, those eyes were so blue. The shade really reminded of her Matabi's, the two-tailed beast's fur. Perhaps she could entertain him just a little? The girl then cleared her throat. Fine. Alright then, monkey. I will admit that deep down, I have a tiny little part of me. A part so small that it makes a bug look huge. That small, tiny, insignificant part cares just slightly about you." She had not meant to stutter. Naruto smiled at her. "Really?" Rolling her eyes, she nodded. "Really? So, since I'll be in here for a while, what should we do to pass the time?" asked Naruto with a small smile, the conversation having cheered him up. "I want you to give me head pats and belly rubs." "Why do you only ever ask for head pats and belly rubs?" The girl placed a finger on her chin and glanced to the side in thought. Hummed the girl pensively. "I ask for them because I like them." "Why do you like them?" "Because they make me feel good." What?" asked the girl innocently, her ears folding downward as she tilted her head. "Could you say that again?" The girl narrowed her eyes. "Because they make me feel good." "Say it just like the first time," replied Naruto with a nod, but like with more energy. "What, you want me to raise both my hands, make peace signs and stick out my tongue as well?" asked the girl with a snarl. "You disgust me." Naruto chuckled. "Hey, it was just a joke. So how about that head pat? Belly rubs too." "Yeah, alright," replied Naruto with a smile before he tapped his lap. "Come here." "Okie dokie," said the girl in response as she slid off her throne and jumped up onto Naruto's lap. "Oof," groaned Naruto as her tailbone hit his stomach. Steady there. "You're not as light as you think you are." His words prompted the girl to slowly turn her head towards him. It was as if her neck was suddenly running on gears as it rotated toward him shakily. She glared at him menacingly from the corner of her eye. "What did you just say about me?" Naruto swallowed quietly. Him and his big dumb mouth. "Sorry," apologized Naruto awkwardly, giving the girl a sheepish smile. She turned her head back and let out a quick, just begin patting my head." "Okay," replied Naruto as he raised both hands and planted them softly on the girl's head, right behind her ears. "Ooh, did I do something wrong?" asked Naruto as he rubbed gently. No, not at all," answered the girl as she tilted her head back slightly, just enough to feel a bit more pressure from Naruto's hands. "Please continue." "Alright," replied Naruto as he began patting her head, his eyes widening slightly as she saw the way the girl's ears twitched every time his fingers got close to them. He liked this. This was enjoyable. It was also kind of weird. Like it felt good. Her hair was silky and soft, but it was kinda awkward listening to all the little cute sounds she made. Naruto wondered if she knew she was making them? If she did, Naruto really did not know what to think of that. If she did not, He also really did not know what to think of that. Move one hand down and rub my belly. Oh yeah, right, belly rubs. Moving a hand down, he began gently rubbing her belly. His eyes narrowed. His hand had never ever gotten this close to the S of a girl before. He swallowed audibly. No bad thoughts. No lewd thoughts. Clean mind. Clean mind. He repeated that mantra in this head over and over again. The sounds the girl made did not help him whatsoever. MMPH. Praise me, ordered the girl, prompting Naruto to widen his eyes. What? Just do it, replied the girl as she closed her eyes and bit her lower lip. Good girl, said Naruto awkwardly, tilting his head slightly to the side in an attempt to capture the girl's reaction. Naruto quirked a brow. Yes, I think that you're a good girl. The girl smiled in response. Now that Naruto thought about it, she really was not human. No human in their right mind would want to spend hours having their head patted. They would much prefer to do other things. The girl felt more of like an intelligent pet than a human with traits from a fox. Say, good job for killing all those monkeys. What? Good job for killing all those monkeys, praised Naruto, putting as much sentimentality into his words as possible. Her tails, having previously been laying flat on his lap and draped to the sides, suddenly sprung up at his words and wrapped around his waist, prompting him to gasp and widen his eyes. They were so fluffy, so damn fluffy and soft. Like clouds. They were clouds made of red chakra. Everything about her was soft. Except for her slaps, but that was obvious. Was this how girls like Sakura and Ino felt like? Why you stopped praising me? Said the girl bashfully with a pout, turning her head to look at him. Oh, sorry, apologized Naruto, you know. You're actually really cute. The girl scoffed. Yeah. You tell me that a lot. I don't want that kind of praise though. What's wrong with being called cute? Well, began the girl with a slight blush on her cheeks. Cute is a word you use for baby monkeys. Plus, I don't want to say. Can you please tell me? Asked Naruto, leaning forward so that she would be able to see his smile. Damn nice idiot, murmured the girl quietly before clearing her throat. Every time you call me cute, my cheeks feel weirdly hot and I get all fuzzy, stated the girl slowly, her hands subconsciously moving to hold on to the hand that Naruto had on her stomach, prompting the boy to widen his eyes. I've never felt this way before. You've never blushed before? Blush? Is that what this is? Naruto nodded. Yeah, TCH, grunted the girl with a small frown. Your monkey traits must be rubbing off on me. Blushing is only done by the weak. I don't think so, disagreed Naruto. Blushing is only natural. Everyone does it. Heck, even Kakashi does it, but only when he reads his porn. This Kakashi fellow sounds like a sleaze bag, stated the girl, prompting Naruto to laugh. He's not that bad. All monkeys are bad. He is that bad, replied the girl firmly. What about me? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side as he quirked an eyebrow. You're not that bad. You're still bad. Just slightly better than the rest. Naruto smiled, the sudden enthusiasm he felt surge through him immediately transferring through his hands and into the head pats and belly rubs he was giving the girl. That's good enough for me. Why yeah, whatever. Good for you, replied the girl, one of her eyes flinching shut as Naruto's expert head pats got to her. As Naruto continued patting her head, he unknowingly grazed the Earl's ear with his finger, eliciting a squeak from the girl. Monkey. Ears off limits. Why you know what happened last time, retorted the girl, her tail subconsciously tightening around Naruto's waist ever so slightly. Yeah, I do, replied Naruto, a shudder running through him as he remembered how hard she had slapped him that day. So are they like sensitive? There was a moment of silence. Super sensitive, admitted the girl, her ears drooping to the sides in defeat. Like do they hurt when I touch them? Asked Naruto with actual worry in his voice. Like is it similar to how you should never touch a dog's tail? The girl shook her head with a furious blush adorning her cheeks. It took only a few seconds, but Naruto's eyes widened considerably when he realized what she meant. So it's like that, huh? Asked Naruto, prompting the girl to nod ashamedly. Now you know. So don't act stupid and don't touch them unless I tell you to. Don't worry, I won't, replied Naruto with a smile as he nodded. Yeah, we'll see about that. A moment of silence passed over, during which Naruto leaned forward so that he did not have to strain as much to apply the appropriate amount of pressure that the girl wanted in her head pats. In the position he was in, he could just barely pick up the scent of the girl's hair. It smelled like the rain. It was calming and serene, which was like the exact opposite of her personality. He thought it was an ironic combination. As he continued patting the girl's head, her tails had coiled around him tighter and tighter. It was really starting to get uncomfortable. Your tails are crushing me. See, can't stop them. Why? They have a mind of their own. Can you tell them to loosen up? Asked Naruto before he swallowed quietly. The girl sighed, fine. She then turned her head to look at her tails. Nines. Let go of the monkey. You're crushing him. They did not respond at first. In fact, they actually tightened in response to her words, eliciting a groan of discomfort from Naruto. I don't care if you like the boy. Let go of him, ordered the girl, prompting Naruto to quirk an eyebrow. The tails finally relented and loosened up, to which Naruto sighed in relief, finally. Also, nines. The girl blushed, I got 9 tails. What did you expect? Naruto shrugged in response. So are we going to do anything else, or are you going to have me give you head pats and belly rubs for 3 days? I don't know, answered the girl with a shrug. I guess all we got to do in here is talk. That's nice, replied Naruto. It's nice having someone to talk to about things. There was a moment of silence. It gave the girl just enough time to think about the boy behind her. Perhaps she was not in the right mind at that moment due to Naruto's innocent warmth and the head pats and belly rubs, but she could not help but want to get closer to him. She hated herself for even thinking about something like that, but at the same time she found herself liking the idea. Why was this container so much different than her previous ones? She hated her previous containers. Snooty women with inferior red hair. Somehow, for some reason, she tolerated Naruto. She actually kinda liked him. She hated it, though despite this, she found that a few words were already forming in the back of her throat, and before she knew it, they began escaping her. Say, Naruto, said the girl suddenly, the use of his name prompting him to quirk an eyebrow. You lost one of your precious people, right? He nodded, yeah, I did. Well, I was thinking about what? I was thinking that maybe I can be one of your precious people? Naruto widened his eyes, really? Idiot, stop acting so excited, but I can't help it. I'm always excited to make new friends. Also stop saying dumb stuff like that. What, friends? Yeah, well maybe if you didn't always blush and act cute when I say that kind of stuff, then I wouldn't say it. Idiot, you're an idiot. I hate idiot monkeys like you. He laughed. Yeah, whatever, I'm an idiot. HMPH. The past few days had been very eventful. First, Jiraiya had made him accompany him on a trip to find a replacement Hokage and a healer to help Kakashi, who ended up in the hospital due to a confrontation with Itachi and Kisame. When Naruto had asked where they were supposed to find such people, Jiraiya had told him that he knew a person that could do both, which only further piqued Naruto's interest. Second, during their little stay in a hotel on their trip, Naruto had gotten a nice introduction to Itachi and Kisame. He would never admit it to anyone, but during that little confrontation, he had nearly pissed his pants. It was not Itachi that scared him, no, Itachi only looked like a much more older and stressed out Sasuke. It was Kisame that scared him the most. The guy looked like someone had created a gross chimera of a human and a shark by accidentally summoning both of them at the same time, resulting in them fusing together during the summoning process. On a side note, Naruto had learned the word chimera from Jiraiya right after that, so all in all, he gained more than he lost that day. Third, Guy had given him his own green jumpsuit. In all honesty, he found the thing really comfortable, but he loved orange too much to switch outfits. So sadly, the jumpsuit would remain in his bag. All in all, his week was not that bad. Sasuke got hurt really bad though. This only motivated Naruto to bolster the energy he put into traveling with Jiraiya to find whoever this extremely skilled healer was. Jiraiya had said her name was Tsunade or something. Tsunami? Tsunade? Tsunana? It started with a Su, but he had forgotten the rest. If only he knew he had gotten it right the first time. Right after the whole ordeal with Itachi and Kisame, he had decided to take a nap. What he wanted to do was tell the girl about how he had just faced two S-ranked ninja and survived. What he got was a lot of scolding. At least the girl's version of scolding. Which meant she just kept calling him an idiot. The conversation it went like this. Phew, today was crazy. Idiot, huh? You're an idiot, repeated the girl sternly, her eyes narrowed as she sat on her throne with her legs crossed. Why is that? Asked Naruto as he took a step forward, his head tilting slightly to the side in confusion. You're just an idiot, answered the girl as she folded her arms. I just thought that you needed to know that. Naruto quirked a brow. Did I do something wrong? Of course you did something wrong, replied the girl as she slammed her fists onto the armrests. What I saw from you today was stupid, borderline moronic. No wait, it was moronic. I have never seen such a moronic monkey like you before. You're like a moronky. He frowned. Is this whole thing about Itachi and that blue-skinned guy? HMPH, grunted the girl in response, her lips pursing together to create a thin line. Is it? He waited patiently for her response. It only took a few seconds for the girl to relent. Yes, it is about that Uchiha and his shark-skinned companion. Naruto widened his eyes. Were you worried about me? The girl blushed in response, and instead of responding, she turned her head and let out a sharp, HMPH. You were worried, said Naruto, his lips curving upward into a smile. You were worried about me. No, I'm not. I'm not worried about you. You say that, but you're blushing, replied Naruto as he walked over and sat down on his throne. I am not, said the girl defensively, scooting her legs back so that her knees pressed against her chest. Naruto snorted before letting out a short chuckle. Yeah, whatever. The girl pouted softly, her tails gently curving in front of her so she could hide a little behind them. You're still stupid. That, replied Naruto, his lips curving up into a warm smile, that I am. The girl began blushing furiously, her tails absolutely quivering as she eyed his terribly warm monkey smile. Less than a second had passed after he had uttered those words before the girl grabbed onto one of her tails and smushed it against her face in an attempt to hide her blush. It just made it that more obvious. Plus her tail made it look like she had a mustache. You know, you really look cute when you do things like that. Shut up, you stupid monkey. Stop saying stupid stuff like that. Why? Do you not like that warm, fuzzy feeling you get? Oh, just shut up. It's a nice feeling, isn't it? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side and smiling. I sometimes get it when I'm talking to you, so you don't need to feel embarrassed. His words only intensified the redness of the girl's face. I said shut up, Naruto. That was how the conversation went. That was also how long it lasted because his nap was cut short when Jiraiya kicked him out of the bed. The old man had then forced him to take a quick shower before they headed out to the nearby market to get some food and supplies. Well, actually, that was not entirely true. It was Naruto's job to get the food and supplies, but Jiraiya went off and spent all of Naruto's monies on hookers. Expensive hookers. The kind that had standards that could not be bought unless you had all the money Naruto had saved over 10 years of his life. That had been the last straw. You could push him off a cliff. You could get sidetracked by beautiful women. You could even force him to wake up, but stealing his money crossed the line. Upon seeing the perverted old man, Naruto immediately rushed towards him and began slapping him. Naruto. Ow, stop, damn it brat, cried Jiraiya as Naruto began clobbering his face in. You bastard, you used all my hard-saved money. Stop, you're spilling all the sake. Ow, take this, and that, and more of this and that and this, shouted Naruto loudly as he kneed Jiraiya in the stomach. I'll pay it all back. I'm sorry, please. Didn't you say that the 3 taboos of being a ninja were alcohol, women and money? Look at yourself and what you're doing, roared Naruto as he delivered a righteous slap across Jiraiya's face. Forgive me, squealed the old man, his face scrunching up in pain as the slap connected. Naruto finally relented, but not before giving the old man one more smack on the head. HMPH. You owe me money. And you owe us money, you damned urchin brat, cried a voice from behind them. Huh? Let out Naruto as he turned around to look at the new person. Persons. 2 people. 2 people in suits. They looked like they were in a mob or some criminal organization. One was bald and was wearing a black suit while the other one was wearing a white one with a collar so high it looked like he had a cone around his head. On the front of the cone-wearing guy's suit was a huge stain. It was probably from the sake he had spilled. "You stained the leader's designer suit. You're going to have pay for it," stated the one wearing the black suit, his voice sounding disgustingly high-pitched for a grown man. "Look, Baldy, I'm broke," replied Naruto, pointing over to his hollowed-out, deflated wallet. "Suits your boss right for wearing a white suit. How much does that suit cost anyways? It's ugly. It must be like what? $10? Said Naruto, giving a mocking look towards the two men. $100,000, stated the cone-collared man plainly. What, you're telling me that pigeon shit-covered suit is $100,000? Yeah, even I would have to agree with that, chimed in Jiraiya as he rubbed the red mark on his cheek with his hand. You must have been scammed pretty hard if you spent $100,000 on that awful-looking suit. The cone-collared man glared at them. Are you asking for it? You better shut your mouths if you know what's good for you. The boss used to be a Chunin from Iwagakure. He was the legendary dark ninja, feared by all. Then why the hell is he wearing a white suit? Shish, Naruto. Let me handle this, said Jiraiya before clearing his throat and standing up. Legendary huh? I doubt it. You seem like you want to get hurt, retorted the cone-collared dunce through grit teeth. Jiraiya looked down at Naruto. Now is the perfect time for me to show you that technique I told you about earlier. Yeah, but I don't really see how I need it. I mean, I can pretty much KO anyone with one slap. The older man rolled his eyes. Yes, but it looks a lot cooler this way. Plus you seriously look like a girl when you slap someone. His words were met by a justified elbow to the arm. Not a light elbow either. You two little shits. Stop ignoring us, said the bald man harshly, sending spittle all over the ground in front of him before he pulled out a switchblade. Just give us the damn money and I won't have to castrate the both of you. Castrate? Naruto shuddered. Jiraiya sighed before holding out his hand. Just watch carefully, Naruto. With that said, chakra began swirling around rapidly in the older man's hands. It was not long until a perfect sphere of chakra sat gently in his palm. Strangely enough, Naruto compared the pure, blue color to the color of his own eyes. The thing looked deceptive, like if he were to touch it, his hand would get blown off. It was kinda like the nine-tailed fox. Cute, but mean and sometimes explosively violent. Why you? Spat the cone-collared man as he charged Jiraiya recklessly. The thug threw out a punch but Jiraiya easily dodged underneath it before driving the Rasengan straight up into the man's stomach. Spiraling around on it like a top, the man then flew straight through up into the ceiling with a loud cry of pain. The only part of him still visible being his two legs as they dangled harmlessly up from above. Legendary, huh? Remarked Jiraiya with a smirk as he eyed the bald man. The man's mouth opened and closed in response. He looked like a fish, a bald fish that had just been pulled out of the water. Letting out a loud, squeaky-sounding scream, the man rushed out through the door, only to trip and lose consciousness when his face hit the ground. Well, began Jiraiya as he walked over to the two dangly pair of legs and pulled a overstuffed wallet out of the pocket. That's that then. Naruto looked up at the white-collared man and shuddered. That must have been the most painful thing he had ever witnessed. He hoped that he never ever got on Jiraiya's bad side. Oh wait, did he not just try to smack the goo out of the old man earlier? Jiraiya. What is it? Sorry for hitting you earlier. The old man chuckled. It's fine. You still owe me all that money you stole from me though. Yeah, whatever. Here, take this, replied Jiraiya with a sigh as he opened up the wallet and placed half of the money in Naruto's hand. With that said, Jiraiya then walked over to a nearby stand and bought a ton of balloons. In Jiraiya fashion, the perverted old man compared a full water balloon to a woman's boob before explaining to Naruto the three processes to the Rasengan. That was pretty much the beginning of Naruto's real training. He knew it was going to be a long, hard and epic journey. It may have just been one technique he had to learn, but he was pretty sure it was going to take forever. He had literally spent half the night practicing it and made no progress at all. Eventually he just decided to call it a night. And that's how it went. You're a real idiot monkey, aren't you? Naruto gave the girl a sheepish smile. Yeah, I can be sometimes. The girl looked at him more a moment before letting out a loud, unladylike groan. She then slid down in her seat, her entire body sagging as she looked at Naruto with an unamused expression. Your teacher is a pervert, stated the girl bluntly. Super pervert, corrected Naruto casually, eliciting another groan from the girl. This is why I killed you monkeys, began the girl as she pinched the bridge of her nose. All these years, I was doing God's work by cleansing the land of filthy monkeys like you. Naruto chuckled, hey, I'm not that bad. The fact that you're okay with your teacher being this lecherous, this disgusting, revolting, mongering, howler monkey, replied the girl with a low sigh as she placed a palm on her face. Why? What did I do to deserve to have to live in the same world as these monkeys? Hey, retorted Naruto as he crossed his arms, like I get how us monkeys can be really perverted and sometimes gross, but you can't honestly be as pure as you say you are. I mean, you must be some really hardcore exhibitionist being okay with being naked all the time before I made you wear clothes. The girl blushed, that's not true. I wouldn't blame you though. I bet I would be naked all the time too if I didn't have to worry about people calling me out on it. His words only made the girl's blush all the more intense. It spread from her cheeks to her ears, all the way to her forehead. For some strange reason, Naruto thought she kinda looked like a tomato. A cute tomato. If you ever get naked in front of me, I will destroy you, threatened the girl in the most cold and intimidating voice she could muster, the only thing betraying the seriousness of her tone being the blush that still remained on her face and the slight quiver in her lip. All right, you don't need to worry, replied Naruto before curving the corners of his lips into a smile. I won't get naked unless you want me to. He winked slyly. What? Sputtered the girl, her hands quickly finding themselves planted on her cheeks. I would end never. If you say so. The girl took a deep breath. I do say so. Naruto nodded. Yes, if you say so. The girl smirked. I do say so. Yeah, whatever, replied Naruto with a small, amused smile on his face. There was a moment of silence. I still think your teacher is stupid and perverted, stated the girl firmly. Yeah, he kinda is, replied Naruto with a nod, but he means well. We'll have to see about that, said the girl in response. Why do you not like Jiraiya? Asked Naruto, tilting his head slightly to the side in curiosity, besides him being perverted? The girl crossed her arms. I get this uncomfortable feeling around him. Like he knows something. Naruto looked at her with a blank expression on his face. Well, okay. Eesh, I'm getting sick of being stuck in here, whined the girl with a groan as she crossed her legs. It's so damn boring in here. What would you do if you got out? Asked Naruto, quirking an eyebrow. A lot of things. I'd eat everything. I'd go run around in the forest. I'd go find a nice cave to sleep in, answered the girl with a nod. You won't kill anyone? The girl looked at him for a second before shrugging. Maybe. I don't know. At this point, I'd rather just leave you dumb monkeys alone. Then I wouldn't have to risk getting sealed up again. She then tilted her head a bit up and glanced away thoughtfully, but then again. I haven't eaten bones in a long time and I am craving them. Monkey bones do taste the best. The girl licked her lips. Blah. Groaned Naruto in response as he shook his head. You know, you're hopeless, right? TCH, you wouldn't understand. Your inferior monkey palate would never understand the refined taste of bones, replied the girl, wiping a bit of drool off the side of her lip. I'm getting hungry just thinking of it. Naruto tilted his head to the side. You can get hungry in here? Well, began the girl with a shrug, I'm not really hungry. I just get cravings. Cravings. So what would happen if you get unsealed? I think those 10 years of not being able to eat would catch up to me. I'd get so hungry I'd eat an entire forest's worth of animals, answered the girl. Like can you starve to death? Asked Naruto. She shook her head. I don't know. I've never had to deal with starving to death. Naruto then sighed. You know what? I've decided I'm gonna keep you in here forever. He watched the girls widen considerably. Even her tails looked as if they were in shock, freezing instantly upon hearing his words. What? Why? What would you do if I tore that seal off? Asked Naruto as he crossed his arms. Sure, you might not kill people for a couple of years, but since you're immortal, I'm pretty sure you'll forget all about me and eventually go back to killing people. Like what is 60 or more years compared to forever? Plus if I don't let you go, then you'd just die with me and then you wouldn't be able to hurt anyone else. The girl pouted. Please don't keep me in here. Naruto crossed his arms. Give me 3 reasons why I should let you go. Began the girl weakly as she raised a finger. She looked at him before metaphorically shrinking as she saw his stern gaze. Well, like you said before. I'm cute, said the girl with a nod, and Naruto felt his shoulders sag, and, well, I've been nice to you, right? That must count for something. That isn't really enough. She swallowed audibly. Even she was not delusional enough to know any reason why the boy should let her go. Despite her usually apathetic attitude, even she could put herself in Naruto's shoes and see that it would be absolutely crazy to let her go. Crap, she hated when even her mind went against her. She had no other option. This was her trap card. Her ace up her sleeve. Her secret weapon. Her dealmaker. You get the idea. I'll tell you my name. Naruto widened his eyes. Really? The girl nodded her head, her lips curving downward into a frown. Yes. But, I will only tell you if you agree to let me go. Oh, okay. Wait, what? It was that easy? All she had to was tell him her name? Eesh. Maybe all this time in her dark, depressing cage was really starting to eat at her mind. Okay, my name is, began the girl dramatically, prompting Naruto to lean forward. She blushed. Never had anyone been so interested to know anything about her. Why, you may, continued the girl before clearing her throat. You may call me Kumiko, the great destroyer of monkeys, queen of the tailed beasts, nine-tailed fox, crusher of bones, enjoyer of screams, and ultimate being of this world. Naruto stared blankly at her. One of his eyes were twitching as if he could not believe what he had just heard from her. It was frankly annoying and disrespectful. At least in her opinion it was. What? How the hell am I supposed to remember all that? Asked Naruto. Well, I gave you my name. You would do well to have some respect and acknowledge it fully. Answered the girl as she crossed her arms and let out a quick HMPH. I think I'm just going to call you Kumi. The girl's eyes visibly twitched. No. You must address me by my full title. I don't think titles matter in here, replied Naruto with a shrug. TCH, grunted the girl in response, it doesn't matter anyways. You're going to let me go now, right? Nope, I guess now I'll have to say my goodbyes. Wait, what? Nope, repeated Naruto, the corner of his lips slowly curving upward into a smirk. What? I thought we made a deal. What deal? I didn't promise you anything. She puffed her cheeks out and bit her lower lip. If only she could be free of this damned seal. Then she could squash Naruto like the insignificant monkey bug that he was. Oh, how she wanted to kill him. To make him scream. She would pulverize his corpse and grind his bones into dust. Look, began Naruto, knocking her out of her thoughts. How about if you can prove to me something, I'll let you go. What do I need to prove you? Asked the girl, her eyes narrowing and her lips pressing together to form a thin line. That's for me to know and you to work hard to find out, answered Naruto, leaning back into his seat. Hummed the girl lowly, the vibrating in her throat turning the hum into a low growl near the end. Do you promise? Naruto nodded. Yeah, I promise. I'll even pinky promise you. Pinky promise? It's something us humans do to sorta like seal the deal, ya know? She shook her head. I don't know, but whatever. Gimme your pinky. No, that's not how you pinky promise. Then how do you monkeys pinky promise? Like this? Like this? No, not like that. Like this. You're doing the same thing. No, you curve your pinky like this, Kumi. My name is Kumiko the Great Destro. You distracted me. We almost had it. We did? Let me restart. Curve your pinky like this, Kumi. Grr, this is frustrating. Look, here, let me. Just give me your hand. What? Whoa, your hand is so soft. NNGH. Wait, are you blushing? No, I am not blushing. That's absurd. You are blushing. Grr, shut up monkey. What? I'm just telling you the truth. I said SHADUP monkey. Whoa, ow, not the face. He did not agree with Tsunade at all. Not at all, not one bit. What she had said back in the restaurant had really pissed him off. Like, how could she say those kinds of things right after the Hokage, his grandpa and her old instructor died defending Konoha? She had just been offered the most reputable, most powerful and most noble position in all of Konoha and she just had to decline it in the most disrespectful way. How could she say those things? He still remembered how angry he got when he heard her say those things. It was really one of those rare moments when he actually let his anger get the better of him. What he did next, even he would admit was stupid. challenging one of the three most powerful ninja in the world and actually expecting to win. Regret was not a word strong enough to describe the pain he felt after that. Though he guessed it was not all in vain. She had given him a chance. Complete the Rasengan and she would become Hokage. If he lost, he would lose all the money that Jiraiya gave him off that white-suited moron. It was a lot of money. Much more than what he had saved up. Perhaps maybe. No. He would perfect the Rasengan, and if he could not, he would drag her ass all the way into the Hokage tower even if it killed him. Most likely it would have, but maybe he could convince Kyumi to lend him some power to do it. Having tails must have been useful. Having tails are useful, said Kyumi with a nod as she casually checked her nails, but number. I won't lend you my power to do something that's stupid. But there's no way I'm gonna be able to complete the Rasengan in 3 days. I was blowing steam out of my ass, replied Naruto as he leant forward in his seat. Kyumi rolled her eyes. HMPH. Maybe this will teach you that you don't always get what you want, even if you really want it. But, began Naruto as he pouted before he tightened his jaw. Fine. I don't need your help. There was a moment of silence. You won't help me, so I'll help myself. Wake me up, replied Naruto as he crossed his arms. She felt an eye twitch. What? You heard me, stated Naruto in response as he let out a sigh. It'll just be like back to normal. I've gotten this far without your help. Normal? But, look, I am thankful for all the help you've given me so far, but I'll never be able to stick to my morals if I keep relying on you to get stronger, replied Naruto, his lips curving downward into a frown. Well then, she snarled, exposing her fangs. Fine. Go do your own damned thing. Just don't come crawling back to me when you fail. Okay, replied Naruto with a solemn nod as he stood up and walked over to her. Damn stupid brat, remarked Kyumi with a low growl as she waved her hand, prompting Naruto to fade away. Her cage was silent once again now that the annoying monkey was no longer there to pester her. She sat there quietly for a few moments before she let out a quiet sniffle. Gritting her teeth, she slowly raised her legs and pressed her knees to her chest before wrapping her arms around them. Looking over at the empty throne in front of her, she furrowed her brow and let out a snarl. Damned stupid brat, she let out lowly. Stupid brat, she let out another sniffle. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Her tails wrapped themselves gently around her. I'm stupid. Why did she feel like this? Why did she feel so empty? She hated this feeling. It was not the emptiness she felt when she was first caged inside of the seal. No, back then, she was never really empty. It was impossible to feel empty if you had nothing inside of you to begin with. That damned monkey. That stupid, repulsive, monkey. That blonde knuckle-headed moron. Damn it, she refused to say his name. It was a disgusting name, fit only for a disgusting species. But she wanted to say it. She, despite every part of her not wanting to, liked saying his name. For every flaw that he had, for every stupid thing that he had ever said or done, he was just. Perfect? No, far from it. He was just Naruto. She needed a new category for him. He was unlike any monkey she had ever met before. He did not fear her to the point where she felt unwelcomed. He did not hate her or try to abuse her power. He was only monkey that had ever actually asked for permission for anything from her. What was that word he used to call his kind again? Humans. Yes, that was it. He was a human, the first of his kind in her eyes. All the rest were just dirty monkeys. Perhaps deep down, she had just the tiniest bit of respect for the boy. Though it could have been misplaced as she never really had much experience with humans. Being as large as she was outside of the seal, they always looked like ants to her. Now that she was looking at one from close-up, her previous opinions have all become messy. There was also that fuzzy feeling in her chest that was constantly stirred whenever Naruto said anything good to or about her. It was almost, dare she say warm? She shook her head to clear her thoughts. She hated being alone. If anything was going to eventually kill her, it would be her brain overloading with thoughts and exploding. She needed to rant. She wanted to rant and for Naruto to hear her rant. She needed to get all these stupid thoughts out of her head. But how could she? Her pride would never let her. God, she hated the idea of Naruto, but she also loved it. Even if she had till the end of the world to think about all this, she seriously doubted she would ever come up with an answer. Times like this, she wished she was like Shukaku. Stupid. Then she would not have thoughts like these troubling her all the time. She sighed quietly to herself as she leaned back in her throne. She liked Naruto. Even she was not delusional enough to not know her own opinions on things. She would never admit that to him though. Or would she? She blushed. No way. Not in a million years. The nine-tailed fox condescending herself to the levels of a monkey. Maybe.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.